If you missed class today, our basic agenda was to discuss the article about the USS Constitution. You can see here that this is the information that you'll need to put into your battles chart. So as I go through this, if you need to pause at any point to give you more time to put your information into your work file, you can do that. And as always, whatever's highlighted will be on your test. And then we reviewed. There's a study guide attached to today's page to get you ready for your quiz tomorrow on the causes of the war. And then we moved on and read about the Battle of Lake Erie, filled in the battles chart for that, and important people. So I'm going to just walk you through this Constitution, the USS Constitution, I should say, versus the Guerriere. The Constitution is the American ship. The Guerriere is the British ship. This is happening in August of 1812, so we're talking just a couple months after the declaration of war. This is off the coast of what they called Massachusetts at the time, but if you look at today's map, it's Maine. So it's way up there in northern United States, off the coast, of course, because this is a naval battle. The winner is the United States, and this is going to increase the U.S. morale and the reputation of our Navy. When this war began, the number of ships that we had was in single digits versus the British Navy, who numbered in the hundreds and hundreds of ships. So we really did have our work cut out for us. And remember, Thomas Jefferson had cut the military, including the Navy, when he was president. So we're pretty desperate in trying to build ships and get ready for this war. And you'll see another example of that with the Battle of Lake Erie. The British ship Guerriere ended up surrendering. You learned that from the article that you read about this. And at this battle, the USS Constitution got its nickname Old Ironsides. It is not an ironclad ship. This is a ship made of wood, but Old Ironsides is a nickname that she earned in this battle because it was as if the cannonballs were bouncing off of her sides, and that's why she has that nickname. This ship is in Boston. You can actually visit this ship. It is the oldest commissioned ship in the U.S. Navy. So imagine that. It still exists. I'm sure they've repaired it and replaced wooden planks and whatnot, but it is still there. So that's the USS Constitution. Now, we're going to switch to the Battle of Lake Erie, and there was a link on today's page to have you read about that. So I'm going to read through that with you now. This is a bit of local history because, of course, it happened on Lake Erie, which is not far from us. The Battle of Lake Erie was a pivotal naval engagement between British and American forces during the War of 1812. At the beginning of the War of 1812, the United States sent Oliver Hazard Perry to command the American forces on Lake Erie. When he arrived in Presque Isle, modern-day Erie, Pennsylvania, Perry commissioned several carpenters to build a fleet. Within a year, he had 9 combat vessels. However, 6 of his vessels were gunboats, small vessels that mounted only a single gun. Only 2, the Lawrence and the Niagara, were full-size ships with an armament of 2 long guns and 18 carronades each. Perry had also assembled a force of about 500 men to serve under him, and after several months of drilling, they were a capable naval unit. In September 1813, Perry set sail for Put-in Bay to meet the British fleet, which was under the command of Robert Harriet Barclay. Like the Americans, the British had begun constructing a fleet at the war's beginning to secure control of Lake Erie. The British were anticipating an easy victory over Perry's force. On September 10, 1813, the Battle of Lake Erie took place. The Americans had 9 vessels, while the British had 6. Early in the battle, the British were taking a heavy toll on the American ships, principally because the British cannons were much more accurate at long distances. When the British destroyed the Lawrence, Perry took the ship's flag and transferred to the Niagara. By the way, guys, the ship's flag that he took down is the big blue flag that says "Don't give up the ship." I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I have it hanging in my classroom. After Perry moved to the Niagara, the Americans began to win the battle. Before Perry's arrival on the Niagara, the ship had hardly engaged the British fleet. Now, the Niagara and Perry inflicted heavy cannon fire on the British ships. The commander of every British ship was killed or wounded, leaving the British ships under the command of junior officers with limited experience. Perry took advantage of this situation. The Niagara rammed the British lead ship while the sailors fired rifles at the British seamen. By nightfall, the British had lowered their flag and surrendered to Perry, who was only 27 years old. That's impressive. Perry sent a dispatch to General William Henry Harrison, recounting the details of the battle. In the dispatch, he wrote, "We have met the enemy, and they are ours." The American victory at the Battle of Lake Erie cut off the British supply lines and forced them to abandon Detroit. It also paved the way for General Harrison's attack on the British and Native American forces at the Battle of the Thames. And I believe that's the next one on your battles chart. So the Battle of Lake Erie is a bit of local history. It happens at Put in Bay, which is in Ohio. It's on an island just north of the Ohio mainland, not far from Cedar Point, if you're familiar with Cedar Point. So that's where that's happening. And I'm going to take you back to the PowerPoint. You should go to your battles chart so that you can fill in the details for the Battle of Lake Erie. Happens in September of 1813. On Lake Erie, of course, in the United States is the winner. The significance is that it ends up cutting off British supply lines. The British were obviously using Lake Erie to move things from Canada down into the United States, and now they won't be able to do that. It forced Britain to abandon Fort Detroit, which is right there on the lake in that area. And it paved the way for Harrison's attack on the British and Indian forces. And I put on there see next battle because the next battle is that battle, which is called the Battle of the Thames. So remember, William Henry Harrison is the guy who defeated Tecumseh's village of Prophetstown. And Tecumseh had fled into Canada. Well, Tecumseh hasn't gone away, and neither has William Henry Harrison. Harrison is basically the commander in charge of land troops over there in the West. And now that the supply line has been cut off, Perry's going to send him a message and say, look, we won, and now you'll be able to do what you need to do on land because we have cut off the supply lines here on water. I am going to fast forward now to the third page where your significant people are. We already have filled in James Madison, the first president to declare war, Tecumseh, the Shawnee chief who wanted to unify native tribes against white settlers, William Henry Harrison, the governor of the Indiana Territory, commander of the Army of the Northwest, fighting British and Indians in that territory in Canada. And now we can add Oliver Hazard Perry with those fabulous sideburns. He'll be on your test. That's why he's highlighted. He won the Battle of Lake Erie, and he's the one with the flag, "Don't give up the ship." He's the one that sends the message to William Henry Harrison, "We have met the enemy, and they are ours." So this is a great turning point for the Americans. Cutting off the British supply lines coming down from Canada was a huge accomplishment. And I believe that covers everything that you missed in class if you were not in class today. So that should get you caught up.